Good afternoon. I will now call the May 25th, 2022 Diversion Authority Land Management Committee to order. Would you take a roll just to see if we've got a quorum, please?
Mrs. Charlene.
I'm here.
Mayor Peterson. Mr. Grubb.
Here.
Mr. Campbell. Mr. Borboom.
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson.
And I believe Mr. Henderson and Mayor Peterson are online, as well as
Mayor Peterson is online too.
yes, as well as Commissioner Mojo.
Okay. Mr. Olson. Mr. Breitling.
Here.
Ms. Preston. Mr. Zimmerman.
Here.
Quorum is present.
And that's a quorum? Okay, thank you. You have the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. And you have had an opportunity to review the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any changes, corrections, additions?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Moving on now to the property acquisition status report. Ms. Smith, is that you? No.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm filling in for Eric Dodds today. Just going to go over the monthly status report. If you turn your attention to page 5, it just kind of goes over the statuses of the parcels. And to update you on this month, we've acquired 13. So 13 of those parcels are turning green, and that includes flowage easements, temporary construction easements, and fee title properties. Other than that, it's pretty much the standard. You can see in the status report which parcels have turned from red to green, from blue to green, and then we had one purchase agreement signed also. So if nobody has any questions on that, I can move forward.
Thank you. So there was a recent ruling. Is that going to change any of the timing of any of this? Are we on schedule, and will we remain on schedule because of that?
Commissioner, that's a good question. I can praise Jessica how quickly she turned off her microphone when you asked that question. No, we are on schedule still. So we've had several internal meetings regarding the Savageau opinion from the Supreme Court. So we actually had a meeting today with the Corps to kind of go over potential impacts on Drain 27. They were able to submit the contract and award that and split it into 2 separate contracts. So we'll continue to move forward on schedule. If we don't have anything back from the courts by September 30th, the Corps will need to make a different decision whether they reissue that bid and go through the whole procurement process again, or if they're able to find a different path. We're not sure at this point, but we're aware of the circumstances and are hoping to find a solution to that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Anyone online have any questions? Then we'll move on to item 5, the memo recommending the disposal of organic farmland.
Yes, so thank you so much. So on April 28th of 2022, the MCC JPA unanimously approved a recommendation from the MFDA and signed by Joel regarding the disposal of organic farmland. A copy of the recommendation letter has been attached to your packet. As noted in the letter, the recommended process for disposal of MCC JPA owned organic farmland is one to establish that market value. The step was completed in November of 2021, so this is done. The next step would then be to identify organic farmland owners and producers who are impacted by the comprehensive project and offer the organic farmland to those impacted organic farmland owners and producers in exchange for necessary land rights. This has been partially established. We have been able to identify the impacted organic farmland owners. We have not offered these parcels to them in a land land exchange. If the impacted organic farmland owners and producers don't accept the exchange of land for necessary land rights, then we'd offer it to landowners impacted by the southern embankment and associated infrastructure component in a land exchange. And if that were not to be fruitful, then we would take it out to public option. So this is a slight deviation from the excess lands policy. It did come with full support from the MCC JPA. I know Mr. Campbell was not able to be here today, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Commissioner Mojo, did you have anything you'd like to add to this? I believe you were part of that committee, is that right?
Yes, I think this is a really good policy in terms of addressing the land concerns that we're hearing from our organic producers. Certainly, there's no easy way to figure out the best way, but I really do feel that this allows us to ensure that we're able to replace affected organic appropriately.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? This is an actionable item to make a recommendation to the DA board for tomorrow's meeting, for a recommendation to utilize this update on the program. So I would entertain.
Commissioner Shirley, I'll
Yes.
make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
This Chuck, I'll second.
Thank you both. Any further discussion?
Mary,
Yes.
this is Chuck. I'm on that committee too, and I think it's a good plan. Also, I just want to echo what Commissioner Mojo said. It's a good thing for Morehead. So just wanted to establish that. So thanks.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. Wonderful. Thank you for letting us know. Anyone else? Would you do a roll call, please?
Mrs. Shirley,
Yes.
Mayor Peterson, Mr. Grubb.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Campbell, Mr. Borwin,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Breitling,
Yes.
Ms. Mojo, Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes.
That is everyone.
The motion passes.
This is Arlette Preston. I vote yes as well. I came in late.
Thank you, Ms. Preston.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, let's get the PRAM update, the Property Rights Acquisition Mitigation Plan.
So this is just an update, not asking for any action on this, but that it would be situational awareness with the PRAM. So we've been working on updating this prior to me starting on November 1st. So it's been a labor of love a little bit. We're kind of in the final phases of that. It's undertaken a little bit of an overhaul with the premise of pulling out some of the specifics, putting them in outside plans, so that if we do need to pivot, as I call it, as situational awareness comes, as we're working with the landowners, we can do that without having to go back to the regulatory agencies. It's in its final approval phase again with OT. We expect to have it back out for a final review of our team and then begin working with the respective regulatory agencies. A2S has put together a lovely matrix. We'll go through then, and if it was, I'll make something up, if organic farmlands was in section 8 before, but now it's sitting in section 2, that matrix will kind of help guide that conversation. Again, it's going to have a little bit of a different look and feel, but our hope is that, one, it's a lot easier to read through because it's a lot shorter, but it does allow us a little bit more flexibility if we need to change things like the organic farmland and how we'll be addressing that. Otherwise, every year we'll be going back to these regulatory agencies asking for their approval of some of our plans. So just want to give you guys an update. I know that our landowners rely fairly heavily on that PRAM to kind of know what their rights are. And so again, we hope to have this completed here in the next month or so.
So is this regulated by the Minnesota DNR and the North Dakota, whatever they're called?
It's
these
Office of
water-
State Engineer. I know
Yes.
it's
Okay.
a struggle still.
So they're not the same mitigation requirements across the project. Is that correct?
Let me see if I understand your question. We will need to take the preamp to both entities. So we will need to go to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and the North Dakota Office of State Engineer for approval of it. They're both going to have to agree across state line what those mitigation efforts will be.
Okay.
And so that's part of the complexity, of course, is getting two separate state regulatory agencies to kind of agree on the efforts that we're putting forth. So again, the hope is that we get this in a good place where we don't have to go back and ask for this again. And then a lot of these we're going to get into in a couple of them down and in the Rimp, those guidance documents that live outside of that preamp. So again, if we need to make an adjustment, we have the flexibility that we need in order to do that. But we provide enough information and what I like to call guardrails in the preamp that both the regulatory agencies are comfortable with the decisions that we're making.
So are there minimum requirements the same, or are they considerably different from state to state?
I don't know that I can effectively answer that just because I wasn't involved in the process the last go around. I know Shockley can answer that question.
Well,
He's
and I
raising
wonder
his
if
hands behind me.
Mr. Zimmerman could, yeah, okay.
I could take a stab, but I'd prefer the city attorney do that, or the general counsel in this case.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So there are differences and distinctions between the two states and their regulatory requirements. Some of them are very nuanced. Some of them are specific. Some of them deal with the measure of mitigation going along with the PMF and also the impacts. And so the short answer is there are differences. Are they significant, large differences? It depends upon what you view as significant and large. I think the biggest issue is the mitigation requirements are probably less flexible in Minnesota than they are in North Dakota. That would be the big takeaway, just because the way that the Minnesota DNR structured its permitting requirements. That said, we are trying to have discussions with the DNR. I think there is some recognition with their staff that the way they drafted some of the permit conditions may not be consistent with what they thought they intended. And so we're having discussions with them, and we're working through trying to be a little more flexible for landowners. You'll recall that was one of the issues that we agreed to as part of the settlement, is that we would have ongoing discussions with Minnesota DNR about having flexibility, and those really impact the area, the fringe areas where you have very limited impacts, maybe less than 6 inches of water. And that can include, can you elevate structures? Can you flood proof them? Can you create a ring levee and essentially make a donut out of them? Those are kind of the issues that we're working through with Minnesota DNR and with Buffalo Red Watershed District.
And thank you. That's exactly what I was referring to, because I know, it just seems like yesterday that we were all in Minnesota talking to lots of folks, and that was their big concern. That, I mean, I know the DNR wants to protect everybody, but a lot of those fringe landowners really wanted to have a lot of options, and so I hope we can accommodate that as best we can. Great. Anyone else have any questions about the PRAM update? Then let's talk about the Rimp loan program.
Yes, the Rimp loan program has been going through a review process. We've been meeting weekly for a couple months now just to kind of look at the process and the guidance documents that have been previously provided. I believe last month there was an update to the board where we asked for additional funding from $5 million up to $15 million. To date, we had only awarded 3 Rimp loans to 2 owners. We're going to see a significant increase at this point because the Rimp loan really does apply to those landowners, farmstead owners in the upstream mitigation area. In that, then, we wanted to ensure that this process was kind of locked up fairly tight. There's not going to be any need for action. We're not going to change the genesis of the program that was previously approved in May of 2020, but it is important to note that we are going through what some might call a fairly laborious process about how does something get approved, what gets approved, what is the process for appraising the farmsteads, how do we get through the approval process once they submit for reimbursement, how do we track those loans that are sitting in an escrow account, who's going to issue the 1099s. Again, we've increased the document by about 10 pages at this point, and that is in final review with OT, and hopefully that will be going out to the land agents within the next week or so. But just want to make you guys aware that, you know, even though something may have been done a couple years ago, as these programs are ramping up at this point, we are reviewing them again, and we are going back through them again. And if we need to make any changes within them, then this is the time that we're doing that. And so, for example, the only notable change within the Rimp program is previously we did ask that if you're going to be eligible for the Rimp loan, that you were in the general area of Cass or Clay County. We did change that. We felt like that was really left up to interpretation and could bring some litigation upon us. And so we've been very specific about the counties that people will be eligible if they move in. The intention was that we keep these businesses, these farmsteads in business, but we also keep the tax base kind of close to home. And so we certainly didn't venture out too far to say Burleigh County, but we did expand the scope a little bit as we're having some concerns with being able to relocate some of the farmsteads and just kind of expanding beyond the Cass and Clay County. So if there's any questions about the Rimp loan program, I'd be happy to answer any of you. I do know that there's pre-approvals that have been completed at the past CCJ WRD meeting, and there will be some tomorrow going forward as well.
So how far out are you going?
Well,
graphically?
Yep, for North Dakota, instead of just Cass, we have Cass, Richard, Barnes, and Trail. And then in Minnesota, instead of just Clay, we had Clay, Wilkin, Becker, and Norman.
So if you're in Cass, you can't go to Clay?
You can,
You can.
yes.
So you could go to Becker if you were in Cass. Okay.
Yeah, and in expanding that, our awareness at this point is there's just one more farmstead that would be eligible for the Rimp loan program.
So one of the concerns I've heard from landowners is the gain that they're going to be taxed on, was it 10 or 15 years down the road?
It's 10 years.
10. Is, you know, and I get that we have nothing to do with that, but is there anything we can structure it so that it's less of an impact? Is that not possible? Have we researched that at all? Because that does seem to be a thorn in people's side.
We have researched it. We have heard the same concerns from some of the landowners who are eligible for Rimp. So the Rimp is a 10-year loan. Starting year 5, 20% is forgiven each year leading up to the 10 years. And at that point in time, it should be 100% forgiven. Every year when we forgive that 20%, they will be taxed on the 20% that is forgiven because essentially we're granting them money. What we've advised them to do is to speak with their tax advisors, whether that's their legal counsel, whether that's a professional tax advisor. There are other opportunities for some of the landowners that they would be eligible for. We've advised the land agents to not provide kind of tax advice. At this point in time, though, what we have told them is that the Rimp loan kind of is what the Rimp loan is. It is a voluntary program. They don't have to accept the funds or all of the funds that are offered to them. But at this point, kind of working with our legal counsel, we don't see another way to structure those loans.
Very good, thanks. Anyone have any questions on the Rimp loan? Then let's talk about the guidance document for partially impacted structure site in the upstream mitigation area, item 8.
Yes, so again, this is just for your awareness. This is another fun document that we've got to dig into a little bit. Mr. Shockley just referenced this. This is one of those items that we need in place to ensure that we're being flexible. Primarily, you know, our landowners on the Minnesota side had some concerns. We are going to be working with a flexible compensation and mitigation plan. That is a requirement of the settlement agreement. And so this document will be a part of that plan to demonstrate that we are being flexible when we are working with the landowners and how we're going to be doing that. So I don't know if you had an opportunity to look through this at all, but it's really it recognizes that each property is unique and will require a customized mitigation solution. It really is just focusing on those structures that are in mitigation zones 2, 3, and 4, since these structures do and can remain under certain conditions. So it's not really applicable to those structures within mitigation zone 1.
A lot of information here.
It is a lot of information.
It looks
A
like.
lot of paperwork I
Like you and your
produced.
team have been very, very busy, and this will be great late-night reading for us, because it would be a shame if you'd put all that time and effort into it and we
And
didn't.
nobody read it.
No, this is great. I think it's really important to have these documents in front of situations that arise rather than trying to react to them. So now's the time to really review these and make sure that it's addressing future needs. Anyone online have any questions for Jody on this or any of these documents that she's referenced?
And if I can, I might skip back a little bit to what Jessica was talking about. You're okay. I don't think you have to move any slides, but last month there were questions about how far along in the process are we in certain components of the project. We did go through an exercise to determine that. So on the channel portion, we're 98% complete in the acquisition of the property that we need. There's one MOU that we're waiting for. There was one parcel that was looked over. That's why it's not at 100%. That does include our last resort eminent domain, just so you know. With the southern embankment, we're at about 77% complete. With the, let's see here, the drain dam mitigation, we're at 100%. With our flowage easements within the UMA, this doesn't include Christine or Wolverton or any parcels along the southern embankment that would be split by work limits. We're at about 17.5%. And with our environmental monitoring easements, we're at 71%. So overall, we are making significant progress. Sometimes it's hard to see that dial move when we meet month to month because you just see kind of one tile turning at a time. I think it's also important to note in the past month, we were able to close litigation on 8 parcels that were in eminent domain. We have additional 2 parcels that we've come to a settlement agreement. We don't really take them off our list until the documents have been signed because we've kind of gone through the process and then, it's not signed at the last minute. So again, there's an additional 2. I met with an attorney this morning, had a great conversation. I have additional conversations on Friday with a different attorney regarding 3 parcels. And then I have, again, some mitigation coming up on the 14th with a handful of parcels. So even though they're in eminent domain and the respective boards have made that decision to move forward with that process, it doesn't mean that our negotiations are done. And again, sometimes it can be difficult because we don't see those tiles turning very quickly. But we really are making significant progress in the lands department. So,
Great, thank you. Well, we appreciate all your efforts and the entire team that's out there working diligently. Anyone else? Then let's move on to item number 9, the Cass County Joint Water Resource District update. I don't see anyone from that group. But, so Jody, I bet
I'm like,
you
you're
could-
making eye contact with me.
if there's anything else you'd like to add that you haven't addressed.
No, I think the biggest thing that we've been working through with the Cass County Joint Water Resource District would be those Rimp loans. And so they've spent quite a bit of time reviewing those and getting those through. A couple of flowage easements, again, if they're coming in at appraised value, the board doesn't need to vote on that. And then working through some of these negotiations on the eminent domain cases. So really, from a high level overview, that's the priority of that board when we meet. Again, they'll have their meeting tomorrow and hopefully do the pre-approval for some of those Rimp loans.
Okay, thank you. And then online, we do have Councilmember Hendrickson and Commissioner Mojo with the Minnesota Joint Board. Do you have an update for us?
Go ahead, Commissioner, if you want to, or I can too. Just the organic farming was the big thing at our last meeting, and then we're going to meet tomorrow, so we should have a full report tomorrow at the Division Authority Board meeting.
Great, thank you. So how many parcels are we working on over there? And I'm not putting you on the spot, Chuck, I'm looking at Jody here.
Are you talking
okay.
about the organic farm?
Well, just, what are they how many are they actively working on the Minnesota side now?
I don't know that number off the top of my head.
Okay, well, that's fine. I was
Okay.
just curious, just how, I mean, I know the North Dakota side is super, super busy, and I assume that things are really starting to ramp up on Minnesota's.
They are, and I know that the land agents are working diligently with the landowners for the flowage easements, and they are making progress on the Minnesota side. So to date, I hate to say it this way, but usually I'm a whack-a-mole, so it elevates to me if there's a problem, and because I don't know, it's probably a good sign that there are no problems. So
Okay, great. Anyone else? Item 11 in your packet, there's the update that will be given to the DA board tomorrow that you can look through. Is there any other business? Any other business? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
And we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today.